Parashat Viekra, we know, opens up. Let's actually read the words. Viekra, Hashem calls to Moshe, which so far so good, right? But the words that it uses, find it. Viekra el Moshe. Hashem calls to Moshe. Then it says, Vayidaber Hashem el Mayed. Hashem spoke to El Mayed. Lamar saying. So the Viekra el Moshe part seems to be unnecessary. What if the pasuk just started Vayidaber Hashem elav, Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe, El Mayed Lamar, Daber Yisrael, right? The Viekra el Moshe doesn't really seem to add anything.
What it adds is a connection to the last, the end of Shemot.
What do you mean?
Because at the end of Shemot, it says that Moshe couldn't go to the Mishkan because of the cloud.
Yeah.
And then...
Oh, so Rashi can tell us, really. So one thing is that this was a call to Moshe, Moshe was hesitant whether he could penetrate or not, and Hashem called to Moshe, that was like a signal for him to come. Right? Viekra Moshe was a signal for Moshe for him to come. So I want to talk a little bit about that concept of signals. It was a signal that Moshe heard, nobody else heard actually. And that's really an idea in general, that sometimes in life, Kadosh Baruch Hu sends us messages. And the question is, are we really paying attention to hear those messages? And those messages comes in all sorts of, sizes and shapes, whether it's, something good happening, bad happening, whatever. Many, messages come from different forms. Actually the famous Maisa, the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem, I'll give you a little background. Baal Shem Tov, we know, introduced the Hasidus movement and met with obviously a lot of skepticism, cynicism, wariness, because it just had followed the debacle of Shabtai Tzvi, and here was another Baal Shem, very charismatic, new Kabbalah, and people were very wary. They thought he was a reformer, and he wasn't a reformed Jew, he was a restoring of Jew. He restored Judaism. He never really added anything new. He simply took ideas and concepts that kind of had gotten laid by the wayside, and he re-emphasized them. Badam Atem Shal Hashem, that you're God's children, we're all loyalty. He stressed hergish, feelings more, and dveikus. And one of the things he emphasized a lot was hashgacha pratis. The fact that Hashem Baruch Hu is always sending us signals. And that especially was important for him to emphasize. If you understand the history or the backdrop of the Baal Shem, the Jews were impoverished in every way. Economically, they were obviously, doing horribly. They were very impoverished. They weren't even able to open businesses in many places. And so that had a trickle-down effect where the children had to go to work, so they didn't get an education. By 10 years old, they work in the fields. So now there was a whole generation that was uneducated as well. They were obviously taunted by the non-Jew, and even by the Jew that was more educated. They saw that the non-Jew, the uneducated Jew is something less. And so they were almost not ostracized, but maybe in a sense felt inferior to everybody else in the Jewish community as well. So politically, there was something didn't have the out. Socially, they weren't accepted. Economically, was bad. Psychologically, they felt totally oppressed. And physically, there were pogroms. So they had it on all sides. And so, but the Baal Shem, and they certainly felt abandoned in every which way. And Baal Shem wanted to restore that concept of everything has a message and everything that Hashem never abandons us. Anyway, so he had many disciples who were on the fence for a while. They weren't sure if they should buy into the Baal Shem or not. One of his greatest disciples was the Toldos Yaakov Yosef of Polania. In fact, most of the writings that we have in the Baal Shem Tov are really through Rabbi Yaakov Yosef. The Baal Shem's Torah was not saved, and many stories about that. And Rabbi Yaakov Yosef wrote some of those, many of his Torah down. The interesting story was the Baal Shem was learning. The story goes, Rabbi Yaakov Yosef was learning with the Baal Shem, and there's a knock on the door. Baal Shem says, "Come in." It's Baal Shem's house, and there's a repairman coming in asking, is there any work to be done? Now, this is kind of shocking today, right? Not only do they not come to your house, you have to beg them to come to your house, right? You have to plead with them, track them down, call them 4,000 times, and maybe they'll do you a favor, right? In those days, they came knocking at your door looking for work. So he says, is there anything for me to repair? So Baal Shem, there's nothing here to repair. So the person said to Baal Shem, the repairman, just very, matter of fact, there's always something to repair. So Baal Shem, okay, I'm sorry, whatever, and he left. And Baal Shem, oh my goodness. What a simon from Shemayim. Hashem is telling us there's always something to repair. There's always something to improve. That's a signal from Hashem. So Rabbi Yaakov says, okay, that's enough. You're pushing it too far. I believe it's Shkach, but I can't take that as a signal from Hashem. And he picks himself up and he walks outdoors. I can't accept that. Baal Shem says to him, you can't accept it, or you don't want to accept it. And he shrugged and he left. As he's leaving the house, there's a fellow that has a wagon, and there are bales of hay that he needs to schlep onto the wagon, and he's asking people for help because it's very heavy. And he turns to the Yaakov who was walking out of Baal Shem's house, and he says, "Can you help me lift the bales?" So Yaakov says, "I can't help you." So he says, "You can't help me, or you don't want to help me." So he heard the exact same words ringing twice. He did a 180 bow face, was straight to Baal Shem and said, "Okay, I'm in." Right? But the bottom line is that's the concept of a signal and hashgacha pratis. So Viekra El Moshe is also be taken in general. That Kadosh Baruch Hu sends us signals that we have to really be attuned to. So we're talking about one particular signal, and that's a signal called pain or discomfort. So normally we live in a society, if you feel pain, discomfort, what's the first thing you do? You get a medicine, take an aspirin or something, and just, or if not medicine, you get a distraction. You watch something, just distract. The pain is not a good thing, and I just got to somehow, get past this pain, right? Rather than, now we know sometimes pain is a really good signal. If you stick your head in a fire, and all of a sudden your finger starts hurting, that's a signal, pull your hand, right? So pain sometimes is a really good signal that the body's monitoring and saying something's not right here. But in general, when it comes to discomfort, we don't see that as a good thing, and we look immediately to anesthetize it. You go to a therapist, take some medicine, take some pills, take some drugs, whatever you're doing, get rid of this pain. The truth is that that's not necessarily the case. Discomfort could be a signal that's very, very helpful, very healthy as well. The example that I want to give you, and I don't know if you did this in the past, is not really a very kosher example, but it's a pretty good example from a lobster. I want to use an example of a lobster, right? So a lobster has a very hard shell. It's got this soft meat inside, and when the lobster grows, the hard shell kind of breaks away, the body expands, and then it develops a new harder shell. How does that happen? When the lobster feels that it's time to expand, it goes submerge itself in the water, bury itself in the sand, gets rid of the old shell, waits till the new shell, the body grows, puts on a new shell, then reappears at the top of the water. That's basically how it goes. So how did the lobster know it was time to shed its old skin? Well, what really happened was the body now starts pressing against the hard shell, and the lobster feels some pain. There's a discomfort going on over here. The body is pushing against the shell. The lobster automatically knows to submerge itself. In a certain sense, we could use the exact same example. The soul sometimes wants to expand, but it's pushed up against the body. The body says, "I'm not going anywhere. I'm not expanding. I'm staying," and it fights the shava. And then you feel this discomfort, and rather than understand that this is, hey, the shava wants to grow. What can I do to kind of get the body out of the way so I can express myself more fully, right? What can I do that? We instead seek every way to somehow ignore that pain. But that's really a signal that we need to pay attention to. And sometimes discomfort is a proof that there's a growing pain going on that needs to be addressed rather than pushed aside. So Viekra Moshe is just one of those signals that Kadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe, but understand that it's a signal that all of us have to take. And incidentally, it's interesting that this Parashat the Torah tells us that we can use salt on the Mizbeach and use salt on the carbon, but we can't use honey on the Mizbeach. We can use honey on the carbon. And Rav Gifter once said very beautifully, said, because honey is an artificial sweetener. And it poses itself on the outside, and you throw sweetener, but it's an artificial sweetener. Salt is not a sweetener. Salt actually brings out whatever taste of what is within, it brings it out. And the lesson he said was that in life, we should be not looking to kind of just artificially sweeten our lives with external things, but rather learn how to bring out truly what's inside of us, and that's the real sweetness you want to get. So again, the same lesson that when you feel discomfort, don't choose to go for the honey and swathe yourself in this honey, but rather try to express what's really going inside that sometimes is not able to come out. And that really kind of connects to the lesson Parashat, which I don't think we got into, and I'll just mention this point because it has to do with Pesach as well. And that is this discomfort really is an issue called Golus, actually. Golus is a really form of discomfort in the sense that the Ramban asks in the beginning of Shmos. I don't know if we talked about this, maybe we did. In the beginning of Shmos, the Ramban asks a simple question. He says, every book, Bereshis, Shmos, everyone has its own particular subject. Bereshis deals with the Avos and the Imos and the building of Chayei Yisrael to the children. Shmos is exile and redemption, very simple. Viekra is going to deal with Karbonis, makes sense. Bamidbar is the Jews' story in the desert and how they function or didn't function in the desert. And Tefillah is basically a review of Moshe Rabbeinu. So every Chumash has its own very unique category. So the Ramban asks, the Sefer Shmos doesn't seem to fit that bill. Because yes, it talks about exile, we were in Mitzrayim, we got out of Mitzrayim, redemption, that's where it should end. Okay, you want to say to push it a little further. It doesn't know what left Mitzrayim. The grand finale is the Kriyas Samsuf. Okay, you want to push it further and say no. The exclamation point is we got the Torah. Okay, but then you start talking about the instruction of building a tabernacle. What does that do with the book of Shmos? That belongs maybe to Viekra, but not in Shmos. Azay Frank the Ramban. That's what Ramban asks. And I'm going to say, I think along the lines that he says, but I'm going to just say embellish a little differently. In our Shemona Esrei, one of the brachas in our request, we say, Re'eina v'yadeinu v'yirveinu. Hashem, please look at our affliction. Baruch Ata Hashem, Goyel Yisrael. You are the Redeemer of the Jewish people. Please redeem us. Clearly seems to be a blessing where we're asking Hashem for redemption, for Gula. But it can't be, because if you fast forward just a few brachas later on, we ask, V'nishlayim ircha, return Jerusalem to its proper glory, Hashiva Shavtei Korishayna, return justice to the world, right? Es Samach David, return to the Davidic dynasty. Those all are portraying a picture of the Messianic era and the final Geula. So those brachas are dealing with Geula and redemption. What does this bracha have to do with redemption? Why did you say brachas? And the answer is that the first bracha, Gal Yisrael, is also about Geula, but personal redemption, whereas the other three brachas are dealing about national redemption. So what is personal redemption? What is national redemption? They both have a similar theme, though, and that is we need to understand what gullus is. We tend to think gullus is when you're outside of Eretz Yisrael, you're dislocated. In Eretz Yisrael, you're back in the sea. It's not untrue, but it's not really the full picture. Gullus is much more than that. Gullus is when a person or a nation, Klal Yisrael, are not able to fully express who they really, really are. Something is limiting them. The gullus is limiting them, whether it's a physical oppression or a spiritual oppression, whatever the case is, but who you are inside is trapped. That's called gullus. When the spark that's inside of you, whatever you want to call it, that just can't come out and is trapped, we call that exile. Exile is when something is trapped inside, or in Klal Yisrael, when they can't fully express who they are. That's also called gullus. So in the first bracha, we're asking Kadosh Baruch Hu to redeem us personally. That whatever who we are, it's our kaichas, that really longing to burst forth, that are being trapped. That we said earlier, the body is holding back to the neshama. We're asking Kadosh Baruch Hu to give us a way to access our neshama and break those barriers, so we experience redemption. And then certainly fast forward to the next brachas. Now you're talking about redemption on a national level, but again, the same idea. But the reason why I took some brachas, because one is we're asking for personal redemption from our personal exile, and personal exile is when who we are inside is trapped. You know, sometimes a person's frustrated in life. We blame it on the boss. We blame it on this. We don't realize what's really going on is who you really are is not really being expressed. You kind of feel you're almost like you're someone else. The real you is not out and fully expressed. That's really called gullus, and geula is when you're it's able to be expressed. So the idea we're coming together over here, this idea that sometimes you feel this discomfort, neshama pushing up against the guf. We can call it now gullus. That the neshama is being stopped.
That's why we need psychologists and psychiatrists.
That's when you Torah.
Antidepressants.
Right. So the bottom line is that's the idea behind understanding who we are, and that's the end. Oh, so that's why the Sefer Shmos ends with the building of the Mishkan, because that was the place where Klal Yisrael were fully able to express who they were. It's part of Geula, because the Mishkan was that vehicle and that venue by which they were fully able to express who their ruchnistic potential. Hence, it belongs in the Sefer of Geula in Sefer Shmos. Okay, so that is one thing. Okay, about Karbonis, I'll just mention. Obviously, we talk about Karbonis over here. Adam kiyak became carbon. The Torah tells us if a person brings a carbon, the Chazal say that an Adam, just like Adam Arishon, he owned the whole world, and therefore any carbon that he brought was not min hageza, wasn't stolen. So too, every person, when they bring a carbon, it can't be stolen property. All right, that's a nice thought, but it's interesting why the Torah teaches that by the word Adam. Kiyak became. I mean, the idea being that. That Adam owned the whole world, and therefore he didn't steal. Why it's like this? There was just say Adam had nobody to steal from, right? Not because he owned the whole world. There was nobody to steal from. Why? What does it mean because he owned the whole world? But the Torah wants to say is I forget my thought. The Torah is trying to say that when you bring a carbon, you're really bringing your whole self. The whole point of a carbon is like, I'm willing to give myself entirely over. And Adam gave himself entirely over because everything did belong to him. So just like Adam brought everything, because everything was his, When a person brings a carbon, you're really bringing your whole self up to Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's really the idea. The second one, I'll take a question in a second. The second idea about Adam is that we talk about Adam bringing a carbon, and we talk already about the chatas, the sin offering. And the reason why we use the word Adam is because, today, what do they say? The two things that are totally inevitable that you can't avoid in life are death and taxes, right? Those two things you can't avoid. And those things give us perhaps the most anxiety in the world. Death, and I don't just mean taxes, but parnasa, making a living and making ends meet, right? Those things cause perhaps more tension than almost anything else. And who brought to the world? Adam. By that one sin, when he ate from Exodus, he brought meat into the world, and he also brought the klal of bezeyas hapechet of lechem. By the sweat of your brow, you have to earn your. So with this one little action, he caused the most gravest consequences that reverberate till this very day. The most incredible consequences. And so, Adam Kiyakra, the Torah wants to let us know that you have to really be careful with the actions you do. Because just like Adam, his actions were just incredible in terms of the ripple effect. Understand that each one of our actions really makes a difference and has grave consequences. And the flip side obviously has good consequences. But we use the mashal of Adam to kind of remind ourselves that we're in a position to create or destroy worlds. And that is exactly what Adam Arisha did himself. Yeah, you want to say something earlier? I'm sorry.
Well, Adam stole from Hashem by eating something.
Yeah, okay,
forbidden.
true.
So,
yes, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
And why is that called, he didn't steal from anybody? I guess you're right, it's called stealing from Hashem, not called stealing from a person, but you're right, there's a special issue stealing from a person, and you're right, anytime, I don't know if it's true if you don't make a bracha, it's called stealing from Hashem, but I don't know if that's what the Chazal meant when they said, you can't bring a carbon from something stolen, but you're right, it is a good point, yes.
Is Ta'anit fasting is something equivalent to Korban that we cannot do?
It's brought down in Sfarim. It is brought down in Sfarim. Al Pi Kabbalah, it says that when you fast, so then your insides, your stomach gets heated up, and it burns up the inside of the carbon. It's supposed to have some sort of effect like a carbon. Al Pi Kabbalah, yeah, there is something like that. That's supposed to accomplish a similar thing. I don't know, a little like I said, above my pay scale, but that's the general idea. All right? Okay. So that's
We're going to give you a raise, Rabbi.
What?
We'll give you a raise so you'll perform
okay.
better.
Now we're talking. There you go. Okay, so that's the idea of Adam Kaplan. You have a carbon, and as far as carbonis, I'll say much more thing. There's also a carbon taida, which is the carbon that we say thank you. Now, for something that something we'll be grateful for. Now, unlike other carbonis, we had a 48-hour period to eat. The carbon taida, you had a smaller window. You only had a 24-hour period to eat. And the question is why. So one explanation is that because it had to all be eaten. So if you only have a 24-hour period, that means you have to invite a whole lot more people to get this thing eaten. So the idea is to spread the word. If you want to say thank you to Hashem, then you want to make the greatest kiddush possible. If you want the world to be aware of that, look, I have what to be grateful for. So the idea is to invite as many people as you can to make that the kiddush Hashem. So the idea of shortening the window was a way of increasing the population so that more people would be aware of the gratefulness that a person has. The second very nice idea, interesting thought, I forget who says this, is that the reason why you have a 24-hour period is because every day has its own reason to say thank you. You shouldn't have to say thank you today for what happened yesterday. Every day you have your own reason to say thank you. So it's kind of like a message that every day you can find something to be grateful for. My brother-in-law, Diana Rebbe, I think he once told me, I'm sure he told me a story, I don't know where I got it from, that a chassid of his called him up and invited him to a Sudas Hadah. What's a Sudas Hadah? You know that when you go through a very difficult time where you had a very risky operation and it burst everything but okay, or you might have been almost in a near fatal car accident, whatever the case is, you make what's called a Sudas Hadah. You should make a Sudas Hadah. A Sudah where you express your thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you invite family members, whoever it is. Okay. So this chassid called up the Rebbe, my brother, and he said, I'm making a Sudas Hadah next week, I'd like you to come. The Rebbe said, okay, but why make a Sudas Hadah? Usually, anything was going on in their lives, they share with the Rebbe. So he's like, I'm not aware of anything that went on traumatic in life. He says, actually nothing. He said, you're right. I said, so why are you making a Sudas Hadah? He said, remember last year, my baby was very, very sick. And, I spoke to you about it, we davened and everything. Baruch Hashem, miracle, she's fine. And I made a Sudas Hadah last year to be grateful that my baby's healthy. He said, yeah. So this year I'm making a Sudah that I don't have to make any more Sudas Hadahs. Right? Right? I'm making sudas on that, right? That's also something to be grateful for. Something we just take that for granted. The fact you don't have to make sudas is also something to give sudas though. So every day there's something to be thankful for, and so therefore it's a 24-hour period. Okay, I'd like to start a little bit, if I can, on some Yonei Pesach. Okay, so the let's. Actually, I even have, I don't think this up with I typed something up many years ago, and I actually found it. Actually, I'm a really bad typer. I'm a bad typer. I don't know how to use any Word documents. So actually, I sent an email to myself, and then I had it printed up. So we pass it around this way. You can keep these actually. All right. Okay. Let's go to page number 2 first. All right. The number 4, we all know, plays a hugely prominent role in the Seder in every which way, whether it's the 4 sons, or whether it's 4 kaisis, or the 4 L'shanis and Geula, and so on and so forth. So the number 4 plays a prominent role. So we know that we have 4 cups of wine, essentially because of the 4 expressions of Geula. On top of the page, I will take you out, I will save you, I will redeem you, and take you as my nation. So the Meisha Chachma, and I'm kind of paraphrasing this Meisha Chachma, that's where I saw this, but I'm saying it a little differently. It says like this. He says the 4 expressions of Geula are a reflection of the 4 kinds of Galus that existed. Top of the page. Physical. We suffered physically. Obviously, we were a torturous enslavement. We suffered physically. We agree. We spiritually. We were exposed and submerged in a decadent Egyptian culture, and we lost much of our spiritual sensitivities. Right? That's the second level. The third level is an Eved, a servant by definition, loses their own identity. You don't belong to yourself, you belong to somebody else. You don't have your own identity, so you have no past. Your past is very often based on where you come from. A servant by definition, if I belong to somebody else, means I don't have my own identity, and I have no past. But also, the Jews in Mitzrayim had no hope for the future. They thought that it's all over, it's done, right? They had no future. But Chazal teach us that there were 4 areas in Egypt that the Jews were able to hold on to, barely. 1, we kept our language, right? 2, we kept our names. 3, we didn't snitch on one another to improve our own personal standing with our Egyptian overlords, right? We could have snitched on one another and got into a more favored position with everybody else, and we didn't do that. And number 3, we remained faithful to our spouses. All right, so 4 things. We kept our language, we kept our names. Yes, I know also something about clothing. We'll see that fits into one of these categories. Kept our language, kept our names, remained faithful to our spouses, and we didn't snitch on one another, despite the fact that it could have improved our particular physical lot. Okay. So, in the merit of these 4, in the schus of these 4 commitments, we were saved from the 4 different layers of gullus. Let's see. Number 1, we kept our names, which means we remained linked with our past. Right? Clearly, a name is something you have in past. And so the fact that we held on to some vestige of our past, right? So therefore, Hashem gave us back our past, and that's the expression, Hashem redeemed us. Redeemed us from being stuck with the past. We kept our language. What defines a nation is its language, or every nation has its own language, so to speak. So the fact that we kept our language means that we remained a nation with aspirations for a future, right? So keeping the language means we had hope for the future. And that's, Hashem took us out as His nation. Okay, that's what the second pasuk says, took us out as His nation, emphasizing His nation, because we had hope for a future to be a nation. Number 3, we looked after each other's physical welfare, so Hashem physically took us out. That's the Mulakachti. And finally, we remained faithful and kept the sanctity and spirituality of our marriage, so Hashem saved us as well. So the 4 Lashonos of Geula are expression of the 4 levels of Geula that were, and in that schus we triggered a release from 4 levels of Gullus, right? And therefore we celebrate the 4 cups of wine at very particular parts of the Seder. Kaddish means Kedusha. So the first kais represents the fact that we was released spiritually. We got back our spiritual identity. Magid, we tell the story of our past history. 3rd cup of wine, Baruch, we celebrate Baruch is benching, we celebrate our physical sustenance. And Nirtzah, the second part of Hallel, we all know, is the Hallel we say about the future Geula. So, in a sense, a very beautiful thought that these 4 expressions of Geula reflect 4 different levels of gullus: physical, spiritual, no past, no future. But because we did 4 different things, we triggered a merit to get redeemed from those things. We kept our names, which are linked to our past. We kept our language, which means hope for the future. We didn't tattle each other, which means that we respect each other physically, and we kept our faithfulness to marriage, which is spiritually. That triggered the redemption in all those 4 areas, and we then symbolize that by having a cup of wine in those particular stations, Kadesh for holiness, Birchas Hamazon for physical, Magid for what happened in the past, and Nirtzah, description of the future. All right? Okay. That's the Meshech Chochmah. It's a very nice, kind of encapsulates in a broader sense.
Who wrote the Meshech Chochmah?
Rameir Simcha.
How many years ago?
Rameir Simcha, he lived the same time as, actually, interesting story, he lived the same time as the Rogatchover. So you're talking about 1900s.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very recent. He has 2 svarim, something called Ar Sameach, which is a commentary on the Rambam, and he also wrote a sefer on Chumash called the Meshech Chochmah, which is a classic work. In fact, it's very unusual. Usually a town or a city had one great luminary, one great rabbi. This town had the Rogatchover, who was a Hasidisha, and the Meshech Chochmah was really misnagid. They were both brilliant people. The Rogatchover was like a genius. I'd probably be a bigger genius than anybody. Rogatchover was literally a genius. He looked like Einstein. You see his face up like this, kind of had that white hair. But Rogatchover was a brilliant, brilliant man. Anyway, somebody once mentioned to the Meshech Chochmah that the Rogatchover, if you ask him a question, he can, quote any parashas in a second, like that. So the Meshech Chochmah said, "I'm not impressed." So somebody thought it was like kind of a dig. And then he said, "I'm not impressed because the Rogatchover reviews the entire Shas every single day. So it's not a big deal. You can quote Shas." Right? That's what brilliant says. So it was kind of it was a cute way of the compliment. So I'm not impressed because he reviews the entire Shas. And actually, it sounds like something impossible to do. My wife's uncle, so they lived in Vienna for a while. And Vienna had these springs, and a lot of people went there for vacation for the springs. And a lot of Rebbes and other Gedolim went there. It was considered to be a healthy thing to go into the springs for a little bit. That was a way to deal with their health. Anyway, so my uncle managed to have shimush or deal with a lot of great Gedolim. And he once told me, actually, there was a bunch of Gedolim. I forget who it was. They were sitting around the table. And somebody mentioned the Chazal, but they couldn't locate it. So one person, I forget who it was, they all had, a lot of them had canes. So my uncle reenacted it. He said, he put his head far on the cane and goes, "It's not a Bavli." Put his head down again. "Nope, it's not a Yerushalmi." Not in Sifri. It's a Mechilta. And they backed it up. That's what he saw with his own eyes. So, these are things that you and I can't even imagine. But it came from the fact that they had obviously gifted with great
You're
brains.
saying this was in Vienna, in Europe?
In Vienna,
before the war?
Yeah.
Wow.
They were very gifted, obviously. They had great brains, but they also had tremendous, they just focused on learning. And everything was about learning, and everything was Mesiras Nefesh, everything was sacrifice for learning, and they got tremendous Siyata Shmaya because they really sacrificed. And I'm not belittling. Our door was a different avoda. Our door we're a little softer, and the levels of Mesiras Nefesh that we have. Mesiras Nefesh means if you manage to learn in a base medrash, even though the air conditioning is at 71 instead of 69, that's considered Mesiras Nefesh. And again, I'm not making fun because we're weaker, softer people, and at first that's Mesiras Nefesh. But in those days, it was real. I'll just tell one more story. I just heard. That's why it's on in front of my brain over here. Was the Panavish Rav. He once said the reason why he was zeicha to grow up in Torah. He said his mother. He said they lived in tremendous poverty, and there's three boys, if I remember the story correctly, and the mother only had one winter coat for these 3 boys, but she wanted them to go to yeshiva. So every day, she dressed one of the boys in a winter coat, walked him 20 minutes. You're talking about, in Europe, cold was cold. You're talking about, 0 degrees. She walked him all the way, left him yeshiva, waited till he warmed up, took off his coat, went back home, took the other child, dressed him up, walked 20 minutes each way in the cold, and the third one. She did it every single day in the winter. That's why she had children like that.
2 hours. 2 hours of walking.
Mesiras Nefesh. That's okay. That's Mesiras Nefesh. At least we should know that it exists, such a thing. Okay, let's go back to let's do the first page a little bit. I'm not going to do all of it tonight, but let's do a little bit tonight. Okay. So this is something I say every year. I'm going to say a little bit of a different twist to it this year. Not a twist, just a little more of an addition rather. And that is, so the matzah. We eat the matzah because we left in a hurry. Okay, great, but it seems to be kind of an incidental thing. So why is that so important that we left in a hurry? We also left. We probably were wearing sandals when we left. Did we wear sandals on the night of Pesach, or they ate with wooden spoons? Like, why is it important? Essentially, we left in a hurry. Why is that an integral piece? Number two is we know it's called Chag Pesach because Hashem passed over the homes of the Jewish people, the firstborn. And again, question to be asked is that, okay, that's a detail of one of the plays. Why does that capture the spirit of Pesach, right? More than any other Makkah. Why are we emphasizing the fact that Hashem skipped over the homes during Makkah's Becharis, and why is that holiday get the name of Pesach because of that? We also mentioned that Ani v'lei Malach, that in the Haggadah we mentioned a few times that Hashem took us out without the benefit of a Malach. No Malach. Why is that an important piece to mention as well? So I just want to share with you an interesting idea that we mentioned, but I can kind of put it all together, and that's the following: that Pesach is a unique zman. In fact, we say Shechiyanu v'giyanu lazman hazeh, right? V'kimanu v'giyanu. What does v'giyanu mean?
Bringing.
No, Shechiyanu v'higiyanu.
Saved
To
or redeemed.
arrive.
To arrive, to reach,
Right.
to arrive, to reach. But the word v'higiya also goes negiya. Negiya means what? To touch. So really, even though higiyano means to arrive to that place, we also have to touch that. We want to be able to touch and really come in contact with this zman. We want to be able to touch it, so to speak. So Pesach, we want to touch the zman of Pesach. What is special and unique about the zman of Pesach? So as you all know, Bnei Yisrael were languishing on the forehand level of impurity, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out of Mitzrayim and declared us to be a holy nation. Now, typically speaking, that involves a process. To go from the lowest level to the highest level, you have to take many interim steps to get to that place. On Pesach, that didn't happen. On Pesach, we went from the lowest level to the highest level in one moment. You see, it was an act of creation. Hashem created us. Creation never takes place over time. The concept of time only exists when there's mass and matter. Then mass and time go together, right? The moment of creation takes place outside the realm of time. You can only have time once you have mass. And once you have mass, you have a process, right? Chametz is a process, right? Flour and water, and then the process takes place over time, and it becomes something else. Matzah is supposed to represent the idea of no process. It's just flour and water, and there's no process. It takes place. Leaving in a hurry doesn't mean it's not trying to emphasize the fact that we left quickly, but it's supposed to give us a concept without the benefit of time. There was no process of time involved. We were created as a nation, no process. The matzah represents no process, unlike chametz, which represents clearly the process. And matzah represents no process. Because we went from nothing to greatness in a moment of creation. And so we literally passed over all the interim steps. So Pesach is called Pesach because we passed over the normal requisite steps of growth that you need to take. We didn't do that on Pesach, and we passed over. Ani v'lo malach means two things. Number one, a malach also represents a constant process. There's a system. A malach is a system of activity, and a malach involves a process. Hashem doesn't need to involve a process. So ani v'lo malach means there was no process involved. If I want to say it a little differently, Klai Yisrael were born that night, right? We were created and born that night. We know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives over to a malach different roles, except there's certain things Hashem doesn't give a malach. And one of them is Leda, birth. Leda Hashem does himself, doesn't give over to a malach. So it makes sense. If Klai Yisrael were born that night, it has to be Ani v'lo malach. It's not through a malach, because Hashem doesn't give over that mafteach. Hashem doesn't give over the key of Leda to a malach. It's only Hashem himself. So there was a Leda of Klai Yisrael, a birth of Klai Yisrael on that night. And that's Ani v'lo malach, and there was no process. And that's why when the child asks, Ma nishtana halayla zeh, he's pointing out the uniqueness of this night. Normally, mitzvahs are done in daytime. Almost all mitzvahs are done in daytime, 99% of the time. The only exception where every mitzvah is a nighttime mitzvah exclusively is Pesach. The matzah, the maror, the Karban Pesach, the Haggadah, it's all nighttime. Why is this night different? That it seems to take on the quality of day. In fact, we have two steps called Sur Mara and Asay Tov. Avoiding bad, doing good. And that's the process. Process number one is first wean yourself off the bad stuff, and then you get involved in the good stuff. Nighttime is associated with Sumara. Daytime is associated with Seitov. It's very simple because daytime is associated with activity. So it's a Seitov. Nighttime, you're sleeping, it represents the cessation of physical activity. That's Sumara. Just don't do bad. Just don't do bad. That's nighttime. So nighttime is supposed to represent Sumara, and daytime is Seitov. If on the night of Pesach, we act as if it's daytime, right? Why are we skipping over the process of Sumara? Klaisel didn't skip over Sumara. I mean, they did skip over Sumara. They went from Memta Shari Tuma. We don't find themselves weeding themselves slowly off it. They didn't weed themselves off. They went from Memta Shari Tuma to the holiest level of the moment. There's no Sumara process. That's Manashtana Halayla Zeh. Look how unique this night is. In that we skip the process of Sumara, we go straight to the holiest levels of Kedusha. That's Manashtana Halayla. That's the idea behind leaving in a hurry. That's the idea behind matzah representing no process. Ani v'lo malach. That's really the picture or the essence of Pesach that we're experiencing every year Pesach, that magical moment we could touch, hopefully, that experience. We also kind of go along for that ride and kind of feel that we've elevated ourselves way beyond where we should be at. Let's just tell you what you want to do now. Let's do the one. Let's talk about which one I want to pick. Yeah. Okay, we mentioned let's do number 5. Right, we do many things so the child should ask. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We encourage a lot of questions.